How to take notes like a genius. Taking notes is extremely important to excelling in our jobs, academics, and life. We take notes when watching a learning video, reading an article, book, textbook, or listening to a lecture. But it can feel intimidating, especially when there's so much information. Someone is speaking fast, and you want to make sure you get all the important details. This video breaks down all the habits you need and the ones you need to let go of, so you can take notes with confidence like a genius. Step 1 is to clear all distractions. Cell phones, a warm room, chatty friends next to you, and not being able to read the board, for example, compete for your attention and drain your brain energy as you try to focus. Why add more stress to your life? Turn off your phone and place it out of sight. Use a notebook instead of laptop or iPad, which can have other enticing open windows and apps. I'll explain later why writing is better than typing. Sit up in the front away from friends if you're in a meeting or classroom, or if you're taking reading notes, find a quiet place like the library, bedroom, or office. From experience working with thousands of middle, high school, college students, and work employees, chatty friends are the number one distraction because it's fun to hang out with them, but even their mere presence causes a multitasking effect, where each time we think about them, talk, or joke with them, it can take minutes to refocus, and this task-switching delay drains brain power, increases stress, slows down our note-taking, and increases the amount of mistakes we make. Say this to your friends next time so they won't get hurt, but understand you're serious about learning. Hey, although I have so much fun sitting next to you, it's been hard to concentrate, and I really need to improve. So I'm going to sit up front today by myself, but let's chat after. Thanks for understanding. Step 2 is to prepare for note-taking. Geniuses don't just start taking notes. They do 5 things to be ready for learning. They generate curiosity. Many times, our professor or boss will state the topic ahead of time in a syllabus or email. Videos, articles, books, and textbooks have chapter titles, subtitles, guiding questions, diagrams, and other text features that clue you in on what it's about. Use these to create questions and learning goals. See how the topic relates to your life and major goals. When you do this, you're creating relevance, curiosity, and emotional investment, all of which supercharge your brain to enter learning mode. Have a pen, pencil, notebook, and highlighter. Store these in a pencil pouch or sliding box so you're not missing information while digging in your bag trying to find these or asking to borrow a pen. If you're hungry, make sure you've eaten something not too processed with too many sugars so you don't experience that energy crash or food coma. If you've eaten well but are still tired, before your class or meeting, splash some cold water on your face, do 100 jumping jacks, drink a glass of water, and smell a lime, peppermint, or rosemary oil as these wake you up and prime you for learning. Works every time. Also, make sure you're getting enough sleep. Emotional state. If you're in a bad mood, stressed, sad, or have something on your mind, take 6 to 10 deep breaths. Then, write your thoughts down and one small but simple action step you can take to resolve the problem. Doing this calms your emotional brain and releases the pleasure chemical dopamine because you're proving to that critical part of our brain that you're actually doing something about it. Have the right attitude. Treat each lecture or reading as a possible gold mine. A speaker or chapter might not always be the most exciting, but don't let that stop you from potentially finding an idea that can improve your life in some way. So keep a curious, open mind, be in charge of your learning, and have empathy for the lecturer or author, even if they might be boring. They worked really hard on their lecture or text, and if you give them a chance, you're bound to learn something impactful. Step 3. Note-taking. Body language. Our mind controls our body, but did you know that our body can also control our mind, thoughts, and emotions? A nervous posture tells your brain that you're nervous. A bored posture tells your brain you're bored. A curious and engaged posture energizes your brain and makes you actually feel that way. So sit up straight, lean forward, act curious, smile, nod, raise your eyebrows with a wow expression, make eye contact with the presenter, and track them around the room. This will instantly change your mood and energy. Here's a useful acronym I've used with high school and college students. It's called SLANT. Set up your notes. Find a new page in your notebook. Write the topic and date. Now, don't make this common mistake where you're writing everything down because you're afraid you'll forget it. That's called transcribing or copying, and you're not a court reporter. You won't keep up, you'll stress out, you won't learn or remember much, and you're adding more work to yourself because you'll have to go home, relearn everything you copied, and fill in missing details since you weren't able to copy everything down in the first place. Instead, you're going to focus, visualize, and actively think through each bit of information, and then you'll write down the key points. This is called hyperlearning, and it contains 4 elements that spell the acronym HERE: Hyperfocus, Envision, Active Thinking, and Recall. Hyperfocus means you can pay attention well to what you're hearing or listening. Think of your attention as a floating magnifying glass. You gain hyperfocus when you do these 3 things. Awareness means you become aware of what you're paying attention to at any moment, like the things in your environment, sensations in your body, emotions, and even thoughts. Typically, you can pay attention to one thing at a time, and you can tell when you're paying attention or when you've lost focus. Refocus means you bring back your attention when you lose focus. If your attention is on a weird smell in the room, the air conditioner sound, the professor's funny accent, or some random thoughts, you still bring your attention back to what the professor or article is saying. Each time you do this, you're making your attention muscle stronger. You don't beat yourself up about losing focus, as this creates stress, which makes it even harder to focus. Instead, you see refocusing as a focus workout, and even reward yourself by mentally telling yourself with a smile, "I refocused, yes," or even doing a fist pump. Lastly, extension means that each time you pay attention, you focus more intently and try to push your attention just a bit further and for a longer time. This focused effort expands your attention span and concentration ability. If you want to learn how to pay attention like a pro, check out this video here and in the description. Envision means you're creating a mental picture or movie in your head of what you're hearing or reading. You do this because the brain remembers visuals, and visuals cause emotions, relevance, and curiosity, the essential ingredients for learning and memory. Visualizing also keeps you engaged with the information, making staying focused easier. Active thinking means you're not passively hearing words and hoping that you'll absorb everything, but you're actively having a mental conversation with the information. You're thinking, what's the main idea here? Is this a main idea or detail? Is this detail that important? Why does this really matter? How can I use this? Remember, you can't capture all the details. Focusing on details too much can confuse and prevent you from seeing the big picture. So have a macro to micro approach. Look for the big ideas first, and then details if there's time. You can gather missing details later by consulting a textbook, peer, or the professor. Hyperlearning is an active process. You're asking questions, evaluating the information, having personal reactions, looking for patterns, and making personal connections. If you're reading, you're doing all this thinking in the margins or over the words. This is called annotating or talking to the text. So remember, your brain is not blank when you're listening. It's actively thinking through the information. The more your brain works, the more you're learning and solidifying it into long-term memory. The more you do this over time, the easier, more automatic, and faster it becomes. Recap means you recall the main idea or ideas in each chunk of information you encounter. You're thinking, what was a key idea? What did I understand? And what questions do I have? So basically, you're quickly summarizing what you learned. Then write your notes. Earlier, I mentioned that writing is better than typing. Here's why. Studies found that writing, compared to typing, helps people remember vocabulary words better, leads to better recall ability, and results in higher test scores. Remember that you're writing your recap, main ideas and any questions you have, and you can draw ideas too. Remember, you're not copying word by word, but you're thinking first through the information, then writing down things in your own words. Sometimes the professor is drawing an important diagram or solving a math or science problem. And in this case, you do want to copy what's happening, but remember to apply hyperlearning so you're also thinking as you're copying each step. There are many note structures to consider. Pick the one that works for you. There's the outline format with headings, subtopics, and details. This is great for organizing textbook or article notes, but it can be difficult to make changes and connections across ideas because of the rigid linear format. There's Cornell Notes, where you write your notes on the right side, main ideas, topics, and cue questions on the left, and a summary on the bottom. What's cool about these is you can fold your paper back and quiz yourself by trying to remember your notes. Graphic organizers might be provided to you, and you just fill in the information in a pre-structured way so you know what the main ideas are. There are presentation slide notes your teacher might give you, so you have the slides and can just focus on capturing your ideas, questions, and key details. Mind maps are my personal favorite. You write your topic in the middle circle and branch it out into subtopics and then subdetails. You can add sketches, questions, and show relationships between ideas. For example, I can show a cause and effect relationship, a process, compare and contrast, and so on. You can describe the connections between ideas because you're not confined to a structure. Here's a mind map I used to make this video. When you go back to review your notes, they're easier to remember because you have a visual representation of your learning. Mind maps mirror how your brain works. We connect new ideas to others. It doesn't matter what format you use, as long as you include a section for capturing your notes and creating something, like questions, drawings, connections, diagrams, making quiz questions, mnemonics for remembering, and finding relevance. As Jim Quick states, how can I use this? Why must I use this? And when will I use this? When writing your notes, include any key terms, definitions if possible, and examples. Write using shorthand or texting writing so you can write fast. If a keyword is homeostasis, for example, instead of writing it all out, write an S in a circle. Here are some shortcuts. You might be familiar with some of these already. If you hear, cells are extremely important because they're the most basic units of life, you might write, cells equal basic life units. If the professor tells a 5-minute story about his cat to illustrate the fear response, just write cat story equals fear. Since you visualized it, you'll remember the details. Engage with the speaker or your peers in discussion by asking questions and participating in activities. If you're reading, have a mental dialogue with the information by referring back to the questions in the active thinking section of hyperlearning. You can also draw ideas, diagrams, and add to your notes in a way that helps you remember them. Within 24 hours, complete your notes. After the lecture or reading, make sure you fill in any missing details and that your questions are answered. Call a friend, refer to a textbook, or go back to the text you're reading to make sure you got the main ideas. Clean up. Make sure you can read and comprehend what you wrote. Chunk ideas with annotations, labels, and brackets so they're easier to understand. Group similar ideas together. Add images, summaries, diagrams, and anything that will help you remember them. Highlight key points and intentionally color code your notes. Quiz yourself over time. Now you have to study your notes correctly if you want to remember them, and many people usually review or reread their notes, which is a big no-no. Studying should be renamed Quiz Yourself. Review your notes using the 4 hyperlearning steps, and then turn your notes over. Take out a blank sheet of paper and rewrite your notes from memory as if you're explaining it to a 6-year-old. This pushes you to really understand the information. This self-quizzing is called active recall, and it helps with learning, memory, and recall. Write questions or question marks wherever you get stuck, and check to see if you made any mistakes, while also improving your weak areas. Create memory tools like acrostics, mnemonics, flashcards, diagrams, concept maps, or a memory palace to help you remember the information long-term. Watch this video to help you with memorizing things. Your goal is to be able to re-explain all your notes in writing without making mistakes. Now make sure you space out this process. Review your lecture or reading notes within 24 hours of learning them, 1 week later, and then 4 weeks later until you're tested on it. This ensures that you're fighting our brain's tendency to forget what we learn rapidly unless we study it over time. Get help if you need. Ask your peers or professor for help. Watch related YouTube videos on the topic. Join a study group and go to tutoring or office hours if you're stuck with anything. Make sure you go prepared. For a video on effective study groups and tutoring sessions, click here in the description. Teach someone your notes. Research shows that teaching what you learn to someone else is the most effective way to learn, memorize, and recall information in both the short and long term. Make sure you teach it in your own words and in a way that anyone, even a 6-year-old, can understand. Improve your note-taking process so that you capture notes faster, more effectively, and so you can organize them in a way that makes it easier to learn and remember. Think about where you're stuck in the note-taking process. Look at other people's notes to get ideas. Ask the professor to review your notes and give suggestions. So what are your favorite note-taking tips? Drop a comment below and like, share, and subscribe if you found this useful.